We are at the 7th Canadian Science Policy Conference, and we are pleased and honored to have a distinguished guest from New Zealand. Chief Science Advisor, New Zealand, Sir Peter Gluckman is here with us today. Thank you very much, Dr. Gluckman, to be with us today. I would like to ask you to give us an overview of what the role of science advice to government could be or should be.
Well, I think it's important to realise that there are multiple forms of science advice, and the structure is not as important as considering the function. And the four major functions of science advice are: first, the regulatory and technical advice that needs to occur in every agency and ministry of government. And there needs to be proper protocols about how that's achieved, whether it's done from within a department or ministry, or whether it's done through expert panels advice, or whether it's done through a chief scientific officer in the ministry. But protocols are important. The second is what I'd call deliberative advice, which is where a government may ask a national academy or a panel of experts to reflect on a problem over some time. Usually will take 1 or 2 years for that work to occur, a complex problem. Sometimes academies produce those reports unasked for, and of course there they may miss the point of what a government needs to know. And so again, matching supply and demand in deliberative reports is important. But of course, deliberative reports should be open, they should be transparent, they should be peer reviewed. They are an important part of the science advisory mechanism. Thirdly, there's what I call informal advice. And if you talk around the world to people who have the role of being science advisors, whatever they're officially called, you find that a lot of what they're really doing is brainstorming with the minister or the prime minister or senior officials at the beginning of a policy cycle. They're trying to make sure that the science isn't corrupted or misunderstood through the policy cycle. They're trying to make some comments at the more summative end of the policy cycle. And if you actually look at it, that's the bulk of what a person like myself does. The Prime Minister and I are having informal discussions, or his staff and I are having informal discussions about how science can benefit New Zealand. And the bulk of my role, I should say, is in that area of using science to improve New Zealand's interests. And then the derivative and fourth form of advice, which I think many people think is the most important, is science advice in emergencies, at which point the science advisor or the science advisory mechanism becomes part of the decision-making process. And what I think we're learning is that that needs to be an integrated response, not just siloed from this panel of experts or this expert and that expert. And again, somebody needs to be able to integrate, bring that together, and know how to reach out to the scientific community. Now, in terms of my own functions, I report only to the Prime Minister. I have independence both from the political process and the bureaucratic process. My terms of reference put number one, improving the use of evidence to inform policy development and implementation across the whole of government. And one of the things we've done to achieve that is put departmental science advisors in place in a number of major departments who have a dotted line reporting to me as well as to the chief executive of their ministry. Secondly, it's to improve the public understanding of science, and that stretches into science and society issues, STEM education issues, and so forth. Thirdly, it's to promote New Zealand's interests through science diplomacy. Fourthly, is to be a sounding voice for policy for science, but it's not my major role. There's a Ministry of Science, there's a science advisor in the Ministry of Science, but clearly I'm asked for my views, and I give them. Both clearly the Prime Minister asks, the Minister of Science seeks them as well. Beyond that, occasionally the Prime Minister will ask for a report for me, which I may either do myself if it's a narrow area, but more likely I'm to turn to a community of experts for assistance, and I get most of my stuff of that nature peer reviewed. I've done a report, for instance, using experts on the implications of climate change for New Zealand. Or I may turn to the Royal Society of New Zealand, our National Academy, and do a joint report with them, as we did on the safety of fluoride in water supplies. Obviously there are various boards and cross-department agencies you get involved in, such as the Strategic Risk and Resilience Panel, which is dealing with trying to improve New Zealand's risk management from human to natural disasters. And finally, as I said, it's working with the departmental science advisors,
Right.
and that committee is a formal committee and includes also the chief statistician and the chief economist from Treasury, a senior official from the civil service, and we invite the President of the Royal Society of New Zealand to attend the meetings as an observer.
Right.
So it's a very
Right.
different system, but it's developed from effectively nothing within 6 years. So I think that, and I'm not saying it's the only way to do it, but I'm saying for a little country, that's how we have developed a system which provides governments with input on how evidence can improve their decision making and in different domains.
Excellent. That was an excellent overview from an expert in the field, and I think there are a lot of lessons that we in Canada can learn from and tap into, and we'll look forward to more collaborations in the specific areas that you just mentioned in future between Canada and New Zealand. And once again, I want to thank you for your presence here and wonderful contribution to the conference. Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's an outstanding conference, and I congratulate you on running this series of meetings. They're very important.
Thank you very much.